Your Excellency, dear guests, diplomats, friends, dear panelists, we can really start. The floor is yours, Mr. Ambassador. I think we can sort of use 10 minutes each, and then we'll see how the discussion follows.
Okay. Well, first of all, good morning, everybody, and I would like to thank the Anilin Foundation for organizing this very interesting gathering and the exquisite breakfast that I see everybody seems to be enjoying. I'm not very big on introductions, so I'll cut to the chase and get into the real business of the day. Well, first of all, our moderator has actually put a difficult task on all of us because she asked a number of questions. Each of them needs a seminar by itself to be answered properly. But we will not get into that. We received a number of suggested questions from the organizers concerning today's event, and they seem to be touching upon different points. One of the most important questions that attracted my attention is why. We all know that questions are always why, what, where, when, and how. But the why is often the most important. Why a country like Egypt, after so many years of seemingly being stable, witnesses a revolution like the one we had, and at such magnitude and such a short period of time, resulting in the removal of a regime that seemed to be staying there forever. There was a joke that was circulating in Egypt that somebody was asking our former president, aren't you going to say goodbye to the Egyptian people? And he replied, why? Are they going somewhere? So that was the notion of the regime. In any case, I think one of the ways to determine why Egypt witnessed a revolution, although it appeared to be stable and progressing and prosperous to a certain extent, we should listen carefully to the slogans that were shouted during the revolution. People started the revolution demanding three things: living or livelihood, liberty, and social justice. Very simple goals, but if we translate each of those slogans into what's missing, we will realize that when they demand for living, it means there is no proper education, no proper jobs, no proper health care, no proper infrastructure. When they call for liberty, that means there is oppression, there is humiliation, there is police brutality, lack of democracy, violation of human rights. I'm trying to simplify. And when they ask for social justice, that means that there is corruption, there is lack of transparency, and the distribution of wealth is not done properly. Economically, over the past few years, Egypt has achieved a 7% growth rate of the economy, which is a staggering number, and by any international standards, this is supposed to be a very good rate for progress. But why were the people angry? Because 20% of Egyptian people were actually benefiting from 80% of the wealth of the country, while the remaining 80% were only left with the remaining 20% of the wealth of the country. I will try to stick to the questions because they seem to be, this is a very interesting, try to identify what the problems are in the region. The problems are the ones I just mentioned, actually. The problems are the causes of the revolution. We have regimes that have lasted longer than some people ever lived, 30 years, 40 years, and so on. And those regimes, after a number of years, become stagnant. They become corrupt. They become more oriented to self-interest than the interest of the nation. Interesting enough, 25th of January, which is the date of the revolution, is also the day of the anniversary of the police in Egypt. And that day was determined in 1956 when three countries, namely France, UK, and Israel, have attacked Egypt after the nationalization of the Suez Canal. And there was a massive battle in the city of Suez, and our police actually did a heroic role in defending the city from occupation, and that day was chosen to be the anniversary of the police of Egypt. And because of the massive increase in police brutality in Egypt, and specifically there was one very specific case of a young man who has been beaten to death by the police for no reason other than discovering a case of corruption in the police and putting a video on YouTube showing those police officers trading drugs. The people decided, about maybe 200,000 people decided to take the streets on that day to protest against police brutality and to demand for the removal of the Interior Minister. Very interesting, or interesting enough, what started on the 25th of January demanding the resignation of one minister ended up 18 days later removing the president of the country. Now, there are questions that you ask, like why the Middle East? And I don't like this term, but in any case we have to use it. Has been portrayed as a one-issue region. I think this issue is very important. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Arab-Israeli conflict in general is central to the region. It's central in more ways than one that most of you might not even imagine. First of all, in its own merit, it's central because there is an occupation and there are rights deprived of people that have the right to have their own state. It is important because it causes instability in the whole region. There was a war between Egypt and Israel until we arrived at peace. Syria was part of this, Jordan was part of this, and of course the Palestinian terrorism. But there is also another reason why this region has been portrayed as a single issue. And part of it was done by the ruling regimes. It was like the scarecrow that they use to continue ruling their countries the way they were ruling their countries. That we are at a state of war, it's an unstable region, we have a country that is occupying parts of our lands or our neighbors' lands, and we have to be vigilant. And by vigilant, then we postpone political reform, we postpone respect of human rights, we postpone democracy. Why? Because we want stability. And because of stability, a country like Egypt with 85 million people, with abundance of resources, with more than one pillar for the economy, we have tourism, we have the Suez Canal revenues, we have the Egyptians abroad revenues, we have exports, we have agriculture. It's still a poor country. We have 40% of the people living under $2 a day. Now, cooperation. I have 2 more minutes, so I'm not going to talk more than I should. Our moderator was talking about the similarities. Are there similarities between the people in Latvia and the people in Egypt, for instance? And the answer would be very simple. Yes, they are both humans. And this entails a lot of similarities. They have the same dreams, the same challenges, the same aspirations. They might go about achieving their goals in a different way, depending on the situation in each country. But the similarities, believe me, are far more greater than the differences. I've traveled to more than 50 countries during my 30 years of diplomatic career. And one of the most important and significant aspects that struck me is how similar people are. I went to South Korea, which is very different. I went to India, Venezuela, and Belgium as well. And if you manage to go beneath the surface, the very thin layer of social conduct and social behavior that differentiate one country from another, in essence, and the core people are very much the same. What can be done to turn the Mediterranean into a bridge and allow a country like Latvia and a country like Egypt to cooperate? This is one of the things that can be done. Getting together and talking and exchanging opinions and ideas and trying to achieve better true understanding without the usual stereotypes that people have about each other. Try to focus on the similarities rather than the differences. Then, of course, there are the classical tools of tourism. We have tens of thousands of Latvians visit Egypt every year. And when they visit Egypt, they don't just enjoy the sun and the beaches and the pyramids, they actually get a taste of Egyptians, how Egyptians are. They see them in their homes and on the streets. And they come back with this notion, and they would be able to share it with others. We have trade. We should be working on increasing trade. And since the structure of the economy is different, I think there is a lot of room for cooperation. Investment, for instance, cultural exchange. Last time I was here, we had an Egyptian film festival that lasted for how many days?
5 days.
5 days, showing 8 movies, and it was very successful. I was surprised how successful it was. At least I say it was successful, and I think the people in Cinema Riga also said it was successful. So to cut a long story short, I think we should step out of stereotypes and step out of judgmental aspects and try to understand that at the end of the day, everywhere they are all people and they have the same aspirations and the same goals, and the tools of cooperation are not, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. They are there, and we just need to activate them and make them more feasible and more useful for everybody. I think I will stop here to allow other speakers to talk, and if there are any questions later, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes, I think we will have all the questions when
All
we complete the first
Yeah.
round. Yeah. But thank you indeed, Mr. Ambassador. I think from what you said, it's really very important to remember that the best way how to do things together is first to be able to touch, to see and smell and feel oneself. And this is really what Annalyn is about, and probably we'll continue this a little bit later to allow people have direct experience. And thank you so much for this clue.